Welcome to today's Triple Z. The Triple Z podcast is a daily program that you can use to help you fall asleep each night. Just turn down the volume, lay back, relax, and enjoy as you fall asleep. We saw that our podcast was topping the charts in Jordan, so we are going to read their Wikipedia entry. Let's learn about this interesting country in the dullest way possible. If you enjoy our program, please be sure to write us a review on your podcast platform and share us with a friend. You both might sleep just a little better at night. Our website is Triple Z, that's 3zs.media. You can also like and share our content on Facebook or our Instagram account zzz_media_podcast. Music for today's episode was provided by the Sleep channel on Spotify. Jordan, officially the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, is a country in Western Asia. It is situated at the crossroads of Asia, Africa, and Europe within the Levant region on the east bank of the Jordan River. Jordan is bordered by Saudi Arabia to the south and east, Iraq to the northeast, Syria to the north, and the Palestinian West Bank, Israel, and the Dead Sea to the west. It has a 26 kilometers, 16 miles, coastline in its southwest on the Gulf of Aqaba's Red Sea, which separates Jordan from Egypt. Amman is Jordan's capital and largest city, as well as its economic, political, and cultural center. Modern-day Jordan has been inhabited by humans since the Paleolithic period. 3 stable kingdoms emerged there at the end of the Bronze Age: Ammon, Moab, and Edom. In the 3rd century BC, the Arab Nabateans established their kingdom with Petra as the capital. Later rulers of the Transjordan region include the Assyrian, Babylonian, Roman, Byzantine, Rashidun, Umayyad, Abbasid, and the Ottoman empires. After the Great Arab Revolt against the Ottomans in 1916 during World War I, the Greater Syria region was partitioned by Britain and France. The Emirate of Transjordan was established in 1921 by the Hashemite, then Emir, Abdullah I, and the emirate became a British protectorate. In 1946, Jordan gained independence and became officially known in Arabic as the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan. The country captured the West Bank during the 1948 Arab-Israeli War and annexed it until it was lost to Israel in 1967. Jordan renounced its claim to the territory in 1988 and became the second Arab state to sign a peace treaty with Israel in 1994. Jordan is a semi-arid country covering an area of 89,342 square kilometers, 34,495 square miles, with a population of 10 million, making it the 11th most populous Arab country. The dominant majority, or around 95% of the country's population, is Sunni Muslim, with a mostly Arab Christian minority. Jordan has been mostly unscathed by the violence that swept the region following the Arab Spring in 2010. From as early as 1948, Jordan has accepted refugees from multiple neighboring countries in conflict. An estimated 2.1 million Palestinian and 1.4 million Syrian refugees are present in Jordan as of a 2015 census, with most Palestinian refugees holding Jordanian citizenship. The kingdom is also a refuge to thousands of Christian Iraqis fleeing persecution by the Islamic State. While Jordan continues to accept refugees, the recent large influx from Syria placed substantial strain on national resources and infrastructure. The sovereign state is a constitutional monarchy, but the king holds wide executive and legislative powers. Jordan is a founding member of the Arab League and the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. The country has a high Human Development Index, ranking 102nd, and is considered an upper-middle income economy. The Jordanian economy, one of the smallest economies in the region, is attractive to foreign investors based upon a skilled workforce. The country is a major tourist destination, also attracting medical tourism due to its well-developed health sector. Nonetheless, a lack of natural resources, large flow of refugees, and regional turmoil have hampered economic growth. Jordan takes its name from the Jordan River, which forms much of the country's northwestern border. While several theories for the origin of the river's name have been proposed, it is most plausible that it derives from the Hebrew word Yered, meaning the descender, reflecting the river's declivity. Much of the area that makes up modern Jordan was historically called Transjordan, meaning across the Jordan, used to denote the lands east of the river. The Hebrew Bible, the founding holy text of Judaism, also referred to by Christians as the Old Testament, refers to the area as Hebrew, Romanized, Ever Hayarden, lit. The other side of the Jordan. Early Arab chronicles referred to the river as Al-Urdun, corresponding to the Hebrew Yarden. Jend al-Urdun was a military district around the river in the early Islamic era. Later, during the Crusades in the beginning of the second millennium, a lordship was established in the area under the name of Ultra Jordan. The oldest known evidence of hominid habitation in Jordan dates back at least 200,000 years. Jordan is rich in Paleolithic remains, up to 20,000 years old, due to its location within the Levant, where expansions of hominids out of Africa converged, as well as due to its more humid climate during the late Pleistocene, resulting in the formation of numerous wetlands in the region. Past lakeshore environments attracted different hominids, and several remains of tools have been found from this period. Scientists have found the world's oldest known evidence of bread making in a 14,500-year-old Natufian site in Jordan's northeastern desert. A transition from hunter-gatherer culture to establishing populous agricultural villages occurred during the Neolithic period, 10,000 to 4,500 BC. Ein Ghazal, one such village located at a site in the east of present-day Amman, is one of the largest known prehistoric settlements in the Near East. Dozens of plaster statues of the human form dating to 7250 BC or earlier have been uncovered there. They are among the earliest large-scale representations of the human form ever found. Other than the Chalcolithic, 4500 to 3600 BC, villages such as Telalit Gassel in the Jordan Valley, a series of circular stone enclosures in the eastern basalt desert, continue to baffle archaeologists about their purpose. Fortified towns and urban centers first emerged in the southern Levant early on in the Bronze Age, 3600 to 1200 BC. Wadi Fainan became a regional center for copper extraction. The metal was exploited on a large scale to produce bronze. Trade and movement of people in the Middle East peaked, spreading and refining civilizations. Villages in Transjordan expanded rapidly in areas with reliable water resources and agricultural land. Ancient Egyptians expanded towards the Levant and came to control both banks of the Jordan River. During the Iron Age, 1200 to 332 BC, after the withdrawal of the Egyptians, Transjordan was home to the kingdoms of Ammon, Edom, and Moab. The peoples of these kingdoms spoke Semitic languages of the Canaanite group. Their polities are considered by archaeologists to have been tribal kingdoms rather than states. Ammon was located in the Ammon Plateau, Moab in the highlands east of the Dead Sea, and Edom in the area around Wadi Arba in the south. The northwestern region of the Transjordan, known then as Gilead, was settled by the Israelites. The Transjordanian kingdoms of Ammon, Edom, and Moab continually clashed with the neighboring Hebrew kingdoms of Israel and Judah, centered west of the Jordan River. One record of this is the Mesha stele, erected by the Moabite king Mesha in 840 BC. On it he lauds himself for the building projects that he initiated in Moab and commemorates his glory and victory against the Israelites. The stele constitutes one of the most important archaeological parallels of accounts recorded in the Bible. At the same time, Israel and the kingdom of Aram Damascus competed for control of the Gilead. Around 740 to 720 BC, Israel and Aram Damascus were conquered by the Neo-Assyrian Empire. The kingdoms of Ammon, Edom, and Moab were subjugated, but were allowed to maintain some degree of independence. Babylonians took over the Assyrians' empire after its disintegration in 627 BC. Although the kingdoms supported the Babylonians against Judah in the 597 BC sack of Jerusalem, they rebelled against Babylon a decade later. The kingdoms were reduced to vassals, a status they retained under the Persian and Hellenic empires. By the beginning of Roman rule around 63 BC, the kingdoms of Ammon, Edom, and Moab had lost their distinct identities and were assimilated into the Roman culture. Some Edomites survived longer, driven by the Nabateans. They had migrated to southern Judea, which became known as Idumea. They were later converted to Judaism by the Hasmoneans. Alexander the Great's conquest of the Persian Empire in 332 BC introduced Hellenistic culture to the Middle East. After Alexander's death in 323 BC, the empire split among his generals, and in the end much of Transjordan was disputed between the Ptolemies based in Egypt and the Seleucids based in Syria. The Nabateans, nomadic Arabs based south of Edom, managed to establish an independent kingdom in 169 BC by exploiting the struggle between the two Greek powers. The Nabatean kingdom controlled much of the trade routes of the region, and it stretched south along the Red Sea coast into the Hejaz Desert, up to as far north as Damascus, which it controlled for a short period, 85 to 71 BC. The Nabateans amassed a fortune from their control of the trade routes, often drawing the envy of their neighbors. Petra, Nabatea's barren capital, flourished in the 1st century AD, driven by its extensive water irrigation systems and agriculture. The Nabateans were also talented stone carvers, building their most elaborate structure, Al-Qasna, in the 1st century AD. It is believed to be the mausoleum of the Arab Nabatean king Aretas IV. Roman legions under Pompey conquered much of the Levant in 63 BC, inaugurating a period of Roman rule that lasted 4 centuries. In 106 AD, Emperor Trajan annexed Nabatea unopposed and rebuilt the King's Highway, which became known as the Via Traiana Nova Road. The Romans gave the Greek cities of Transjordan, Philadelphia, Amman, Gerasa, Jerash, Gadara, Amkis, Pella, Tabakat Fel, and Arbila, Irbid, and other Hellenistic cities in Palestine and southern Syria a level of autonomy by forming the Decapolis, a 10-city league. Jerash is one of the best preserved Roman cities in the east. It was even visited by Emperor Hadrian during his journey to Palestine. In 324 AD, the Roman Empire split and the Eastern Roman Empire, later known as the Byzantine Empire, continued to control or influence the region until 636 AD. Christianity had become legal within the empire in 313 AD after Emperor Constantine the Great converted to Christianity. The Edict of Thessalonica made Christianity the official state religion in 380 AD. Transjordan prospered during the Byzantine era, and Christian churches were built everywhere. The Aqaba Church in Isla was built during this era. It is considered to be the world's first purpose-built Christian church. Rasas in southern Oman contains at least 16 Byzantine churches. Meanwhile, Petra's importance declined as sea trade routes emerged, and after a 363 earthquake destroyed many structures, it declined further, eventually being abandoned. The Sasanian Empire in the east became the Byzantines' rivals, and frequent confrontations sometimes led to the Sassanids controlling some parts of the region, including Transjordan. In 629 AD, during the Battle of Muta in what is today Karak Governorate, the Byzantines and their Arab Christian clients, the Ghassanids, staved off an attack by a Muslim Rashidun force that marched northwards towards the Levant from the Hijaz, in modern-day Saudi Arabia. The Byzantines, however, were defeated by the Muslims in 636 AD at the decisive Battle of Yarmouk, just north of Transjordan. Transjordan was an essential territory for the conquest of Damascus. The first, or Rashidun, Caliphate was followed by that of the Umayyads, 661 to 750. Under the Umayyad Caliphate, several desert castles were constructed in Transjordan, including Qasr al-Mshada and Qasr al-Halabat. The Abbasid Caliphate's campaign to take over the Umayyads began in Transjordan. A powerful 749 AD earthquake is thought to have contributed to the Umayyads' defeat to the Abbasids, who moved the Caliphate's capital from Damascus to Baghdad. During Abbasid rule, 750 to 969, several Arab tribes moved northwards and settled in the Levant. As had happened during the Roman era, growth of maritime trade diminished Transjordan's central position, and the area became increasingly impoverished. After the decline of the Abbasids, Transjordan was ruled by the Fatimid Caliphate, 969 to 1070, then by the Crusader Kingdom of Jerusalem, 1115 to 1187. The Crusaders constructed several Crusader castles as part of the lordship of Ultra-Jordan, including those of Montreal and Al-Karak. The Ayyubids built the Ijlam Castle and rebuilt older castles to be used as military outposts against the Crusaders. During the Battle of Hattin, 1187, near Lake Tiberias just north of Transjordan, the Crusaders lost to Saladin, the founder of the Ayyubid dynasty, 1187 to 1260. Villages in Transjordan under the Ayyubids became important stops for Muslim pilgrims going to Mecca who traveled along the route that connected Syria to the Hijaz. Several of the Ayyubid castles were used and expanded by the Mamluks, 1260 to 1516, who divided Transjordan between the provinces of Karak and Damascus. During the next century, Transjordan experienced Mongol attacks, but the Mongols were ultimately repelled by the Mamluks after the Battle of Ain Jalut, 1260. In 1516, the Ottoman Caliphate's forces conquered Mamluk territory. Agricultural villages in Transjordan witnessed a period of relative prosperity in the 16th century, but were later abandoned. Transjordan was of marginal importance to the Ottoman authorities. As a result, Ottoman presence was virtually absent and reduced to annual tax collection visits. More Arab Bedouin tribes moved into Transjordan from Syria and the Hijaz during the first 3 centuries of Ottoman rule, including the Adwan, the Bani Sakar, and the Hawattat. These tribes laid claims to different parts of the region, and with the absence of a meaningful Ottoman authority, Transjordan slid into a state of anarchy that continued until the 19th century. This led to a short-lived occupation by the Wahhabi forces, 1803 to 1812, an ultra-Orthodox Islamic movement that emerged in Najd, in modern-day Saudi Arabia. Ibrahim Pasha, son of the governor of the Egypt Eyalet under the request of the Ottoman Sultan, rooted out the Wahhabis by 1818. In 1833, Ibrahim Pasha turned on the Ottomans and established his rule over the Levant. His oppressive policies led to the unsuccessful Peasants' Revolt in Palestine in 1834. Transjordanian cities of Al-Salt and Al-Karak were destroyed by Ibrahim Pasha's forces for harboring a Peasants' Revolt leader. Egyptian rule was forcibly ended in 1841, with Ottoman rule restored. Only after Ibrahim Pasha's campaign did the Ottoman Empire try to solidify its presence in the Syria Vilayet, which Transjordan was part of. A series of tax and land reforms, Tanzimat, in 1864 brought some prosperity back to agriculture and to abandoned villages. The end of virtually autonomy predictably provoked a backlash in other areas of Transjordan. Muslim Circassians and Chechens, fleeing Russian persecution, sought refuge in the Levant. In Transjordan, and with Ottoman support, Circassians first settled in the long-abandoned vicinity of Amman in 1867, and later in the surrounding villages. After having established its administration, conscription and heavy taxation policies by the Ottoman authorities led to revolts in the areas it controlled. Transjordan's tribes in particular revolted during the Shabak, 1905, and the Karak revolts, 1910, which were brutally suppressed. The construction of the Hejaz Railway in 1908, stretching across the length of Transjordan and linking Mecca with Istanbul, helped the population economically, as Transjordan became a stopover for pilgrims. However, increasing policies of Turkification and centralization adopted by the Ottoman Empire disenchanted the Arabs of the Levant. For centuries of stagnation during Ottoman rule came to an end during World War I by the 1916 Arab Revolt, driven by long-term resentment towards the Ottoman authorities and growing Arab nationalism. The revolt was led by Sharif Hussein of Mecca and his sons Abdullah, Faisal, and Ali, members of the Hashemite family of the Hejaz. Locally, the revolt garnered the support of the Transjordanian tribes, including Bedouins, Circassians, and Christians. The allies of World War I, including Britain and France, whose imperial interests converged with the Arabist cause, offered support. The revolt started on June 5, 1916 from Medina and pushed northwards until the fighting reached Transjordan in the Battle of Aqaba on July 6, 1917. The revolt reached its climax when Faisal entered Damascus in October 1918 and established an Arab-led military administration in Oeta East, later declared as the Arab Kingdom of Syria, both of which Transjordan was part of. During this period, the southernmost region of the country, including Ma'an and Aqaba, was also claimed by the neighboring kingdom of Hejaz. The nascent Hashemite kingdom over Greater Syria was forced to surrender to French troops on July 24, 1920 during the Battle of Massillon. The French occupied only the northern part of the Syrian kingdom, leaving Transjordan in a period of interregnum. Arab aspirations failed to gain international recognition, due mainly to the secret 1916 Sykes-Picot Agreement, which divided the region into French and British spheres of influence, and the 1917 Balfour Declaration, which promised Palestine to Jews. This was seen by the Hashemites and the Arabs as a betrayal of their previous agreements with the British, including the 1915 McMahon-Hussein Correspondence, in which the British stated their willingness to recognize the independence of a unified Arab state stretching from Aleppo to Aden under the rule of the Hashemites. The British High Commissioner, Herbert Samuel, traveled to Transjordan on August 21, 1920, to meet with Al-Salt's residents. He there declared to a crowd of 600 Transjordanian notables that the British government would aid the establishment of local governments in Transjordan, which is to be kept separate from that of Palestine. The second meeting took place in Mkes on September 2, where the British government representative Major Fitzroy Somerset received a petition that demanded an independent Arab government in Transjordan to be led by an Arab prince, Emir, land sale in Transjordan to Jews be stopped, as well as the prevention of Jewish immigration there, that Britain establish and fund a national army, and that free trade be maintained between Transjordan and the rest of the region. Abdullah, the second son of Sharif Hussein, arrived from Hijaz by train in Ma'an in southern Transjordan on November 21, 1920, to redeem the greater Syrian kingdom his brother had lost. Transjordan then was in disarray, widely considered to be ungovernable with its dysfunctional local governments. Abdullah gained the trust of Transjordan's tribal leaders before scrambling to convince them of the benefits of an organized government. Abdullah's successes drew the envy of the British, even when it was in their interest. The British reluctantly accepted Abdullah as ruler of Transjordan after having given him a 6-month trial. In March 1921, the British decided to add Transjordan to their mandate for Palestine, in which they would implement their Sharifian solution policy without applying the provisions of the mandate dealing with Jewish settlement. On April 11, 1921, the Emirate of Transjordan was established with Abdullah as emir. In September 1922, the Council of the League of Nations recognized Transjordan as a state under the terms of the Transjordan Memorandum. Transjordan remained a British mandate until 1946, but it had been granted a greater level of autonomy than the region west of the Jordan River. Multiple difficulties emerged upon the assumption of power in the region by the Hashemite leadership. In Transjordan, small local rebellions at Qura in 1921 and 1923 were suppressed by the emir's forces with the help of the British. Wahhabis from Najd regained strength and repeatedly raided the southern parts of his territory in 1922 to 1924, seriously threatening the emir's position. The emir was unable to repel those raids without the aid of the local Bedouin tribes and the British, who maintained a military base with a small RAF detachment close to Amman. The Treaty of London, signed by the British government and the Emir of Transjordan on March 22, 1946, recognized the independence of the state upon ratification by both countries' parliaments. On May 25, 1946, the day that the treaty was ratified by the Transjordan Parliament, Transjordan was raised to the status of a kingdom under the name of the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan in Arabic, with Abdullah as its first king, although it continued to be referred to as the Hashemite Kingdom of Transjordan in English until 1949. May 25th is now celebrated as the nation's Independence Day, a public holiday. Jordan became a member of the United Nations on December 14, 1955. On May 15, 1948, as part of the 1948 Arab-Israeli War, Jordan intervened in Palestine together with many other Arab states. Following the war, Jordan controlled the West Bank, and on April 24, 1950, Jordan formally annexed these territories after the Jericho Conference. In response, some Arab countries demanded Jordan's expulsion from the Arab League. On June 12, 1950, the Arab League declared that the annexation was a temporary, practical measure and that Jordan was holding the territory as a trustee pending a future settlement. King Abdullah was assassinated at the Al-Aqsa Mosque in 1951 by a Palestinian militant, amid rumors he intended to sign a peace treaty with Israel. Abdullah was succeeded by his son Talal, who would soon abdicate due to illness in favor of his eldest son Hussein. Talal established the country's modern constitution in 1952. Hussein ascended to the throne in 1953 at the age of 17. Jordan witnessed great political uncertainty in the following period. The 1950s were a period of political upheaval as Nasserism and Pan-Arabism swept the Arab world. On March 1, 1956, King Hussein Arabiized the command of the army by dismissing a number of senior British officers, an act made to remove remaining foreign influence in the country. In 1958, Jordan and neighboring Hashemite Iraq formed the Arab Federation as a response to the formation of the rival United Arab Republic between Nasser's Egypt and Syria. The union lasted only 6 months, being dissolved after Iraqi King Faisal II, Hussein's cousin, was deposed by a bloody military coup on July 14, 1958. Jordan signed a military pact with Egypt just before Israel launched a preemptive strike on Egypt to begin the Six-Day War in June 1967, where Jordan and Syria joined the war. The Arab states were defeated and Jordan lost control of the West Bank to Israel. The War of Attrition with Israel followed, which included the 1968 Battle of Karami, where the combined forces of the Jordanian Armed Forces and the Palestine Liberation Organization (PLO) repelled an Israeli attack on the Karami camp on the Jordanian border with the West Bank. Despite the fact that the Palestinians had limited involvement against the Israeli forces, the events at Karami gained wide recognition and acclaim in the Arab world. As a result, the time period following the battle witnessed an upsurge of support for Palestinian paramilitary elements, the Fedayeen, within Jordan from other Arab countries. The Fedayeen activities soon became a threat to Jordan's rule of law. In September 1970, the Jordanian army targeted the Fedayeen, and the resultant fighting led to the expulsion of Palestinian fighters from various PLO groups into Lebanon in a conflict that became known as Black September. In 1973, Egypt and Syria waged the Yom Kippur War on Israel, and fighting occurred along the 1967 Jordan River ceasefire line. Jordan sent a brigade to Syria to attack Israeli units on Syrian territory, but did not engage Israeli forces from Jordanian territory. At the Rabat Summit Conference in 1974, in the aftermath of the Yom Kippur War, Jordan agreed, along with the rest of the Arab League, that the PLO was the sole legitimate representative of the Palestinian people. Subsequently, Jordan renounced its claims to the West Bank in 1988. At the 1991 Madrid Conference, Jordan agreed to negotiate a peace treaty sponsored by the US and the Soviet Union. The Israel-Jordan Treaty of Peace was signed on October 26, 1994. In 1997, in retribution for a bombing, Israeli agents entered Jordan using Canadian passports and poisoned Khalid Meshal, a senior Hamas leader living in Jordan. Bowing to intense international pressure, Israel provided an antidote to the poison and released dozens of political prisoners, including Sheikh Ahmed Yassin, after King Hussein threatened to annul the peace treaty. On February 7, 1999, Abdullah II ascended the throne upon the death of his father Hussein, who had ruled for nearly 50 years. Abdullah embarked on economic liberalization when he assumed the throne, and his reforms led to an economic boom which continued until 2008. Abdullah II has been credited with increasing foreign investment, improving public-private partnerships, and providing the foundation for Aqaba's free trade zone and Jordan's flourishing information and communication technology (ICT) sector. He also set up 5 other special economic zones. However, during the following years, Jordan's economy experienced hardship as it dealt with the effects of the Great Recession and spillover from the Arab Spring. Al-Qaeda under Abu Musab al-Zarqawi's leadership launched coordinated explosions in 3 hotel lobbies in Amman on November 9, 2005, resulting in 60 deaths and 115 injured. The bombings, which targeted civilians, caused widespread outrage among Jordanians. The attack is considered to be a rare event in the country, and Jordan's internal security was dramatically improved afterwards. No major terrorist attacks have occurred since then. Abdullah and Jordan are viewed with contempt by Islamic extremists for the country's peace treaty with Israel, its relationship with the West, and its mostly non-religious laws. The Arab Spring were large-scale protests that erupted in the Arab world in 2011, demanding economic and political reforms. Many of these protests tore down regimes in some Arab nations, leading to instability that ended with violent civil wars. In Jordan, in response to domestic unrest, Abdullah replaced his prime minister and introduced a number of reforms, including reforming the constitution and laws governing public freedoms and elections. Proportional representation was reintroduced to the Jordanian parliament in the 2016 general election, a move which he said would eventually lead to establishing parliamentary governments. Jordan was left largely unscathed from the violence that swept the region despite an influx of 1.4 million Syrian refugees into the natural resources-lacking country and the emergence of the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, ISIL. On April 4, 2021, 19 people were arrested, including Prince Hamza, the former Crown Prince of Jordan, who was placed under house arrest after having been accused of working to destabilize the kingdom. Jordan sits strategically at the crossroads of the continents of Asia, Africa, and Europe, in the Levant area of the Fertile Crescent, a cradle of civilization. It is 89,341 square kilometers, 34,495 square miles, large, and 400 kilometers, 250 miles, long between its northernmost and southernmost points, Mks and Aqaba respectively. The kingdom lies between 29 degrees and 34 degrees north, and 34 degrees and 40 degrees east. It is bordered by Saudi Arabia to the south and the east, Iraq to the northeast, Syria to the north, and Israel and Palestine, West Bank, to the west. The east is an arid plateau irrigated by oases and seasonal water streams. Major cities are overwhelmingly located on the northwestern part of the kingdom due to its fertile soils and relatively abundant rainfall. These include Irbid, Jerash, and Zarqat in the northwest, the capital Amman and Al-Salt in the central west, and Madaba, Al-Karak, and Aqaba in the southwest. Major towns in the eastern part of the country are the oasis towns of Azraq and Ruwaysht. In the west, a highland area of arable land and Mediterranean evergreen forestry drops suddenly into the Jordan Rift Valley. The Rift Valley contains the Jordan River and the Dead Sea, which separates Jordan from Israel. Jordan has a 26 kilometers, 16 miles, shoreline on the Gulf of Aqaba in the Red Sea, but is otherwise landlocked. The Yarmouk River, an eastern tributary of the Jordan, forms part of the boundary between Jordan and Syria, including the occupied Golan Heights to the north. The other boundaries are formed by several international and local agreements and do not follow well-defined natural features. The highest point is Jabal al-Dami at 1,854 meters, 6,083 feet above sea level, while the lowest is the Dead Sea -420 meters, -1,378 feet, the lowest land point on Earth. Jordan has a diverse range of habitats, ecosystems, and biota due to its varied landscapes and environments. The Royal Society for the Conservation of Nature was set up in 1966 to protect and manage Jordan's natural resources. Nature reserves in Jordan include the Dana Biosphere Reserve, the Azraq Wetland Reserve, the Shomari Wildlife Reserve, and the Mujib Nature Reserve. The climate in Jordan varies greatly. Generally, the further inland from the Mediterranean, there are greater contrasts in temperature and less rainfall. The country's average elevation is 812 meters, 2,664 feet SL. The highlands above the Jordan Valley, mountains of the Dead Sea and Wadi Araba, and as far south as Ras Al Nakab are dominated by a Mediterranean climate, while the eastern and northeastern areas of the country are arid desert. Although the desert parts of the kingdom reach high temperatures, the heat is usually moderated by low humidity and a daytime breeze, while the nights are cool. Summers, lasting from May to September, are hot and dry, with temperatures averaging around 32 degrees Celsius 90 degrees Fahrenheit and sometimes exceeding 40 degrees Celsius 104 degrees Fahrenheit between July and August. The winter, lasting from November to March, is relatively cool, with temperatures averaging around 11.08 degrees Celsius 52 degrees Fahrenheit. Winter also sees frequent showers and occasional snowfall in some western elevated areas. Over 2,000 plant species have been recorded in Jordan. Many of the flowering plants bloom in the spring after the winter rains, and the type of vegetation depends largely on the levels of precipitation. The mountainous regions in the northwest are clothed in forests, while further south and east the vegetation becomes more scrubby and transitions to steppe-type vegetation. Forests cover 1.5 million dunams, 1,500 square kilometers, less than 2% of Jordan, making Jordan among the world's least forested countries, the international average being 15%. Plant species and genera include the Aleppo pine, Sarcopterygium, Salvia dominica, black iris, Tamarix, Anabasis, Artemisia, Acacia, Mediterranean cypress, and Phoenician juniper. The mountainous regions in the northwest are clothed in natural forests of pine, deciduous oak, evergreen oak, pistachio, and wild olive. Mammal and reptile species include the long-eared hedgehog, Nubian ibex, wild boar, fallow deer, Arabian wolf, desert monitor, honey badger, glass snake, caracal, golden jackal, and the roe deer, among others. Bird include the hooded crow, Eurasian jay, lappet-faced vulture, Barbary falcon, hoopoe, pharaoh eagle, common cuckoo, Tristram's starling, Palestine sunbird, Sinai rosefinch, lesser kestrel, house crow, and the white spectacled bulbul. For terrestrial ecoregions lie with Jordan's borders, Syrian and xeric grasslands and shrublands, eastern Mediterranean conifer sclerophyllous broadleaf forests, Mesopotamian shrub desert, and Red Sea Nubo-Sindian tropical desert and semi-desert. Jordan is a unitary state under a constitutional monarchy. Jordan's constitution, adopted in 1952 and amended a number of times since, is the legal framework that governs the monarch, government, bicameral legislature, and judiciary. The king retains wide executive and legislative powers from the government and parliament. The king exercises his powers through the government that he appoints for a 4-year term, which is responsible before the parliament that is made up of 2 chambers, the Senate and the House of Representatives. The judiciary is independent according to the Constitution, but in practice often lacks independence. The king is the head of state and commander-in-chief of the armed forces. He can declare war and peace, ratify laws and treaties, convene and close legislative sessions, call and postpone elections, dismiss the government and dissolve the parliament. The appointed government can also be dismissed through a majority vote of no confidence by the elected House of Representatives. After a bill is proposed by the government, it must be approved by the House of Representatives, then the Senate, and becomes law after being ratified by the king. A royal veto on legislation can be overridden by a 2/3 vote in a joint session of both houses. The parliament also has the right of interpellation. The 65 members of the upper Senate are directly appointed by the king. The Constitution mandates that they be veteran politicians, judges, and generals who previously served in the government or in the House of Representatives. The 130 members of the lower House of Representatives are elected through partyless proportional representation in 23 constituencies for a 4-year term. Minimum quotas exist in the House of Representatives for women, 15 seats, though they won 20 seats in the 2016 election, Christians, 9 seats, and Circassians and Chechens, 3 seats. Courts are divided into 3 categories: civil, religious, and special. The civil courts deal with civil and criminal matters, including cases brought against the government. The civil courts include magistrate courts, courts of first instance, courts of appeal, high administrative courts which hear cases relating to administrative matters, and the Constitutional Court, which was set up in 2012 in order to hear cases regarding the constitutionality of laws. Although Islam is the state religion, the Constitution preserves religious and personal freedoms. Religious law only extends to matters of personal status such as divorce and inheritance in religious courts, and is partially based on Islamic Sharia law. The special court deals with cases forwarded by the civil one. The capital city of Jordan is Amman, located in north-central Jordan. Jordan is divided into 12 governorates, muhafaza, and formally grouped into 3 regions: northern, central, southern. These are subdivided into a total of 52 districts, liwa, which are further divided into neighborhoods in urban areas or into towns in rural ones. The current monarch, Abdullah II, ascended to the throne in February 1999 after the death of his father King Hussein. Abdullah reaffirmed Jordan's commitment to the peace treaty with Israel and its relations with the United States. He refocused the government's agenda on economic reform during his first year. King Abdullah's eldest son, Prince Hussein, is the current Crown Prince of Jordan. The current Prime Minister is Bishar Kassaneh, who received his position on October 12, 2020. Abdullah had announced his intentions of turning Jordan into a parliamentary system where the largest bloc in parliament forms a government. However, the underdevelopment of political parties in the country has hampered such moves. Jordan has around 50 political parties representing nationalist, leftist, Islamist, and liberal ideologies. Political parties contested a fifth of the seats in the 2016 elections, the remainder belonging to independent politicians. According to Freedom House, Jordan is ranked as not free in the Freedom in the World 2022 report. Jordan ranked 94th globally in the Cato Institute's Human Freedom Index in 2021 and ranked 58th in the Corruption Perceptions Index (CPI) issued by Transparency International in 2021. In the 2022 Press Freedom Index by Reporters Without Borders, Jordan ranked 151st out of 180 countries worldwide in the political context. Scoring was 40 on a scale from 0, least free, to 105, most free. The report added the Arab Spring and the Syrian conflict have led the authorities to tighten their grip on the media and, in particular, the Internet, despite an outcry from civil society. Jordanian media consists of public and private institutions. Popular Jordanian newspapers include Al Gad and the Jordan Times. Al Mamlaka, Roya, and Jordan TV are some Jordanian TV channels. Internet penetration in Jordan reached 76% in 2015. There are concerns that the government will use the COVID-19 pandemic in Jordan to silence dissidents. The first-level subdivision in Jordan is the Muhafaza or Governorate. The governorates are divided into liwa or districts, which are often further subdivided into qada or sub-districts. Control for each administrative unit is in a chief town administrative center known as Al-Naya. The kingdom has followed a pro-Western foreign policy and maintained close relations with the United States and the United Kingdom. During the First Gulf War, 1990, these relations were damaged by Jordan's neutrality and its maintenance of relations with Iraq. Later, Jordan restored its relations with Western countries through its participation in the enforcement of UN sanctions against Iraq and in the Southwest Asia peace process. After King Hussein's death in 1999, relations between Jordan and the Persian Gulf countries greatly improved. Jordan is a key ally of the US and UK and, together with Egypt and the United Arab Emirates, is one of only 3 Arab nations to have signed peace treaties with Israel, Jordan's direct neighbor. Jordan views an independent Palestinian state with the 1967 borders as part of the two-state solution and of supreme national interest. The ruling Hashemite dynasty has had custodianship over holy sites in Jerusalem since 1924, a position reinforced in the Israel-Jordan peace treaty. Turmoil in Jerusalem's Al-Aqsa Mosque between Israelis and Palestinians created tensions between Jordan and Israel concerning the former's role in protecting the Muslim and Christian sites in Jerusalem. Jordan is a founding member of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation and of the Arab League. It enjoys advanced status with the European Union and is part of the European Neighbourhood Policy (ENP), which aims to increase links between the EU and its neighbours. Jordan and Morocco tried to join the Gulf Cooperation Council (GCC) in 2011, but the Gulf countries offered a 5-year development aid program instead.